So, in accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast over the Newbury Public Access Channel. The town of Newbury, in response to the COVID-19 virus, is currently following the guidance from the Newbury Health Agent, Massachusetts Department of Public Health, and the CDC regarding the virus and the steps communities can take to prevent the spread. As such, all town facilities are currently closed to the public. In accordance with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, general law, chapter 30A, paragraph 20, all public meetings are being conducted remotely and without public comment at the chair's discretion. This meeting will be broadcast live through local access cable on Zoom and will be found on the Newbury Access YouTube channel. So, welcome, Happy New Year to you all. Erica, how are you today?
I am good, thank you.
Okay, so we have Tracy Blaze with us, Linda Allen, our vice chair. We've got Tom Howard. We've got Erica Jacobson, KB Yasser, and me and Tracy. Okay, so we've called to order, we've established a quorum, and Tracy, let's go off to you. We've got. Okay.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I provided earlier today, I don't know how much detail you want to get into it, but I provided some preliminary revenue and expenditure estimates. I think if we had to have a theme for our budget this year, it would probably be uncertainty. We've fared very well throughout most of the pandemic. And when I say that, I mean in terms of reimbursements through the CARES Act. The previous chief and the current chief, as well as the town accountant, have spent a great deal of time in ensuring that all of the eligible expenditures were captured and the requisite paperwork was submitted for reimbursement. So we closed out 20 in a good place. 21, again, we've got everything in place to capture the expenditures for reimbursement. And the uncertainty comes on the revenue side of our books primarily. You know, I don't know how many people are going out and buying new cars right now. We don't know how many people are going to be wanting to put additions on their homes. People seem to still be quite cautious. On a good note, in terms of property tax revenues, we are right where we normally would be. So I don't anticipate that we're going to have a significant problem unless something else happens on the heels of COVID. But so property revenues are okay right now. Motor vehicle and other town estimated receipts, I'm a little cautious about. I tried to be a little more conservative this year in the estimates. Right now, I still have a budget deficit in the realm of about $200,000. So this is just, you know, our first pass, our first draft. More work needs to be done. Things will be fine-tuned. Obviously, you know, Erica, you can certainly speak to the Triton budget. They're still working on their budget. I haven't heard anything from Whittier or Essex Tech as of right now. So there's a lot of fine tuning that will go on in the next month or so. Right now, town meeting is still scheduled for, I believe it's the 27th, the last Tuesday in April. The select board has not voted on that yet, but they will be discussing it in their meeting next Tuesday, the 9th. But that's what we're shooting for right now. And I think the goal is to try and, much like we did last June, to try and streamline it as much as possible. I mean, a number of people will have been vaccinated, but probably not some of us. So we'll try to, get people in and out. Mostly the feedback, actually all of the feedback was very positive for our previous June town meeting. People felt like we got them in there quickly. They felt safe. They felt like they were distanced enough. We conducted business very quickly, and got everybody out. So hopefully we'll use what we learned from that meeting to try and keep everybody safe. So that's where we're at right now.
Good. Well, it looks like you're just running about 4% for 2022 above 2021.
Correct.
So, and looking at your projected revenues, they're up about 3.7%.
Right. You can see the issue there.
Just a little bit of a gap. That's not too bad.
Yes.
So,
Yeah. But again, it is the first pass. So.
mhm. And speaking of that, Erica, we had your report basically from the finances of Triton,
Yes.
and it looks like we're looking at about $570,000.
570 right now looks like the high end of any increase. So to give everyone a little bit of context, I'm going to find the email I sent just to double check my words. But last week there were two different budget proposals. It was actually the same presentation 2 nights in a row. One was at the school committee meeting, and the next night was at the District Communications Committee meeting, the DCC. So those two meetings went through a preliminary assessment, kind of a preliminary budget. And rather than go through and do out line by line, they basically just said, to do level services, this is how much it will cost us to keep everything level services.
Mhm.
The new budget would be would be a level services budget, would be a total increase to the 3 towns of approximately $1.3 million.
Okay.
If they did it for all of the budget requests, and then also there's some discretionary funding from the federal government that's coming down, that they can use for some of these one-time expenses related to the COVID crisis. The high end, if they did all of the budget requests that they wanted, would be 1.7 million total over last year's budget. And again, those numbers get split between the 3 towns.
Mhm.
The interesting thing this year, we always know that there's one town gets the benefit because we do it based on proportion of enrollment. And the enrollment numbers are based on the October 1st, 2020 numbers right now. And this year, Rowley saw a net decrease of students in the district, driven in large part by the Clark School. The Clark School is located in Rowley. They gave a $10,000 hometown discount to anyone who wanted to put their kids into the elementary school there. And their model was, basically a lot of families in Rowley chose it because it gave them the opportunity to just lock into a model that they wanted, whether that be remote, in person, or hybrid, and not be at the will of the Triton School Committee in making decisions. It is anticipated by Narissa and Brian within the administration and within the school committee that many of these families will return to the district. So next year there will actually be more students, but the appropriation is done on the October number. So Rowley they are now responsible for 31.11% of the budget. They saw a decrease of 0.86%. Newberry, we saw an increase of 0.12%. So we're now responsible for 28.81. And Salisbury saw the biggest increase of 0.74%. And that puts them just over the 40% mark for enrollment numbers. So as one can imagine, Rowley is, their increase on the budget is anywhere from $150,000 to $284,000 over last year. And that's pretty palatable to the initial indications from the selectmen that were on the DCC meeting.
Mhm.
Salisbury, Neil left before he could speak and tell us, but he pretty much sent a note that they are looking at between 820,000 and just under $1,994,000. And he said he would be much more comfortable with the $800,000 figure. So that's where we're at. And we did not, Jeff and Alicia and I were on the call, and we did not commit Newbury. We let them know that the Board of Selectmen was meeting last night and we're meeting tonight, and that we would bring the numbers back to them and we'll go from here. The preliminary budget is going to be voted on the 10th. So a week from, they're going to be probably at the school committee. They'll probably have a little bit more discussion tomorrow night. And then in next Wednesday, they'll vote that budget. That will be the high water mark. You can expect that the final budget will be either at that dollar figure or lower. So, any questions?
Erica, was there no reason there wouldn't have been some type of savings this year with the schools? I mean, they weren't in session, they weren't, it just seems like there should have been some type of savings in their budgets.
No, because one of the things that they've done is that what they didn't do is that they've done a lot of transfers in between. So there's a lot of unfilled positions because there's instructional aid positions that they haven't been able to fill. However, they've needed to make expenditures in other areas, you know, the amount of technology that was purchased, and just the, you know, the HVAC systems, everything that had to be done was moved around within that operating budget to account for it.
Wasn't a lot of that money given back to them through the CARES Act?
Yes, they have been using that, and they're actually offsetting by about $225,000 of next year's budget using ESSER is actually that's their bucket of money of using ESSER funds for some curriculum increases during the summer because of COVID, because of the loss in learning that's being come across, as well as the so they're doing that. They're also going to probably fund a health and wellness coordinator to help with a lot of the social emotional issues that are coming out from this. So there are added expenses being brought in by the COVID and the remote learning. The other thing is that because of the way all of it's running, the transportation is we still have to run the same number of buses, even though it's half the number of kids because of the spacing requirements. So things like that, we would think we're only transporting half as many students. We can't fill every seat. It's every other seat on the bus. So it's a lot of increase here, decrease there, but in there, all of it's being balanced out. And they've been, go right ahead.
No, I was gonna say, so the bus companies got full, even though they only ran half the time?
No, they're running full time. And even when school is in remote for the whole district, the high priority learners, there's a special group of students that are still going to school and we still have to provide transportation for, and that's still completely district wide. So if it's a high schooler who needs full in-person learning, whether it's they're on an IEP or other special education plan, we have to provide transportation. So where were we?
We were just finishing up with the budget for the towns, and Tom had asked about, are there any
Potential savings out of Triton.
savings for this, and what I had seen and what you had seen as well was anytime there's a savings there, you turn around and there's a cost for getting this to work for as many students as they're trying to get it to work for.
Yeah, and the district right now is in the hybrid model fully across all the schools. There is a dashboard that's on the Triton website that you can see the number of cases by school, by day, and the number of close contacts by school, by day. So there's a parents group that's still pushing for full return to in-person learning, but I don't think that that's even feasible unless there's a grand big change of going from the 6-foot distance rule to a 3-foot distance rule. There's just not enough space in the buildings, even utilizing everything, to have 100% of students back in at the same time across the board. For some schools, it might be a little bit easier. Newberry Elementary has a little bit more space because it was built for more students than are there. But even with that, it's not something that could be easily implemented. I don't think it's
probably not a good idea. Our
Yes.
our grandson has gone back to school in person. They now have a 40% positive COVID rate. in their
Jeez.
school. Okay, that's
Yeah.
not what you want to deal with.
No.
So that was their experiment, and they got away with it for a while, and then people went out and brought it back, and it just spread like crazy.
Yeah.
And with the new variant, it's going to be a little worse.
Mm.
Wow.
Or quick question. What are they negotiating in terms of the selectmen regarding the increased pricing, right? Do they have a choice, or?
It's more, Tracy knows this too, is that it's usually the town that typically gets the largest percentage increase typically pushes back the most. And in recent years, that's been Salisbury. And so then the school committee tries to make the budget work within what's acceptable to the 3 towns. So they kind of look to us as to give a little like, it's looking good, or it's not looking like it's going to be a good idea. Can you bring it down? And then they try to figure that out. So it is always a bit of a give and take.
I gotcha. But ultimately, even if we say it's not looking good, they're just pulling from the kids either way. So am I correct on that? I mean,
it will impact. And some of the ones that they really, for one of the expenses that they're putting in, it's a new position, but it would be to fund a special ed teacher, a special ed role to meet the needs of 4 very high need students who are all in the same age cohort. And by doing that, it could save upwards of $180,000 a year per student, because if we had to send them out of district. So there's a lot of costs with the schools that aren't about just, we have, 1,700 students and we spend $10,000 on each of them. It's like, it's not that way. It's that there's definitely some costs that are higher. And just like us, a lot of their increases, just like the town faces, a lot of their increases are based on their salaries, insurance, all of the same things that drive our budget up by that 2 to 3%. It's exactly what's driving their budget up by 2 to 3%.
and the calculation is always driven off of number of students sent. It has nothing to do with revenue per town.
No, it's part of the regional agreement. Goes back to that enrollment calculator, and it was a little bit of a joke, I think, Brian brought it up of like, we could always revisit the regional agreement. And I was like, didn't you guys when I left, this was, we thought we were going to talk about it, but that was 3 years ago. So it's always talked about, but inevitably it's hard to proportion any other way.
Yeah, I guess for Tracy, at what point does that number get to a point where we just can't afford it? And then you have no choice, right? Like there's got to be a breaking point.
What we typically do, KV, is we want to make sure we're always looking overall at the percentages. We generally speaking, for probably the last 15 years anyway, we want to make sure that educational funding always stays within 50% of our operating budget. It fluctuates a little bit. Sometimes it's 51, sometimes it's 53, but we don't want to ever see the educational funding falling behind. What we do is we apply, we take a look at all of our new revenues on an annual basis. We look at all the new money that the town's getting, whether it's from property taxes, our estimated receipts, cherry sheets, everything. We add it all together. So just like that, we want 50% of our budget committed to education. We want to make sure that we're committing about 50% of our new revenues as well. If the district came in with the request that significantly exceeded 50% of our new revenues, it's not like we don't have a choice. We have a choice. We propose an override. Assuming we're in agreement, the budget is, we see the merit in the budget increases, then it would be up to the select board. I mean, upon the recommendation of the finance committee, but the select board to say, yes, we see the merit in this budget. We want to propose an override, and they would put that on the town election and the town meeting. But the resources are finite, and the Triton School Committee and the superintendent certainly does a great job in trying to, they're very much aware of the budgetary constraints that the communities have. They communicate with us all the time. And they do the best they can in providing us with the district's needs, understanding our constraints, so.
And they know that the bulk of more than 70% of the budget for the district comes from the member towns. The proportion provided by the state and by Chapter 70 funds and, transportation reimbursement, all of those things actually they've been declining year over year. And there's I can send you the last year's budget summary from the district, which really shows the clear, how much more percentage is being put on the towns, and the state's not keeping pace with how much the costs are increasing. I do know that the school committee is constantly trying to lobby the state for some changes in formulas that would benefit us as a regional district. The 100% of regional transportation reimbursement would go a long way. And other just things that we're not a high need city. We don't have, so when funds come out, they don't come out proportional to every town in city and town. They come out a little bit to favor the ones that are the most neediest.
But we are also a community that relies very, very heavily on the property taxes.
Yes.
So that's, why we have to look towards overrides. We don't have the significant commercial development that would offset some of that burden.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Just a historical note also, in the mid 80s, the town would get a budget from the school and they could not change it.
Right.
And so the overrides in those particular cases would be to fund the other services for the town. The school got its money. That ended, I think, in 86 or somewhere around there. And it's been, if you look at what the schools have, what has happened to the schools, we have, as with all of the things that happen in the town, we've got tighter and tighter and tighter for all of that period of time. So it is tight. Would love to have more funding, which had been available much earlier on, but is not available right now.
And curious, why do we think that Rowley will come back to those students will end up coming back?
Mostly we think that we're not sure that the discount will be offered again. And so the difference, basically $10,000 off of private education, that's probably somewhere at $25,000, $30,000 a year. It's okay to suck it up for 1 year. They think a lot of families would make that choice. But if you have a quality education, your kids can go back full-time in person, that they're going to come back to the local free to them school.
Yes, they're paying for it.
I don't know. We'll find out. It's hard to, I can tell, I mean, this is just conjecture. It's hard. Once you commit your child to a school, it's really hard to pull them out. And most families are making that decision prior to submitting in, even though that they go, oh, it's 10 grand off. they don't typically shift kids around, you know, based on.
Yeah, I
It's
think
very
that
hard to do
there's,
that.
people are having some conversations with their neighbors. Narissa's in Rowley and talking to parents in Rowley about their decisions. They're trying to really reach out one-on-one. It was about 170 students, fewer students in the district this year overall. So that's, and again, driven in large part to what the decisions were and wanting to like know what a decision was
Wow.
rather than.
Clearly it'd be some conversation between parents in Raleigh that all of a sudden collectively decide they're gonna pull out to meet what you're talking about, where you're not bouncing your kids around unless all their friends are going with them.
And it's definitely, I mean, I feel, especially my kids are in, I have one is in her last year of elementary school at NES, and she's in the remote academy, because we wanted to have a consistent teacher experience and minimize risk for our family. Our son is at the high school and they're in the hybrid, but it's not optimal for him, but the Florida virtual model that they selected would have completely put him on a self-directed path with no connection to Triton teachers. So our decision was made to keep him in district, but it's not easy. And that choice, I still fault the school. I fault the administration and school committee, and have been outspoken that Florida virtual model was not but I think they were hamstrung by resources, money, and bodies to be able to do a full remote high school experience. So they know they don't have endless buckets of money from the towns or other places.
Yeah, most decisions are driven from financial reasons, and
Yes.
unfortunately, I think that's what's going to happen with us as well as a town.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So.
Okay, well, thank you, Erica. Is there anything else? Any questions for Erica?
Yeah.
Good job. Okay, we had our monthly revenue and revenue report and our department expenditure reports, which went out recently. I went through, did anybody have any questions? Things look basically about where we would expect for where we are in this period of time. There was nothing that jumped out at me. Anybody else have? Okay. And then we had and the same thing with our year to year, the overall differences are about where we would be, and amazing that we're exactly where we should be as far as the amount of the year past and the amount we have collected. That's I think that's a first.
Tracy, why was the big hit on the investments?
What are you referring to, Tom? What are you looking at?
I'm looking at, it looks like a reduction of about 26,000.
Are you looking at where we're 47% complete? 35,111?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's just how much we've actually received to date. So we're only halfway through the year.
So we're anticipating that we'll come back to closer to last year's?
Yes.
Exactly.
Okay.
By the time we get through June and all of our revenues are posted for the full 12-month period, we should be fine.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Does anyone have any new business to bring up? Okay, Tracy, on the budget going forward, when are we going to have some budget figures, and are you looking at any transfers before the annual town meeting?
This year, what we're going to do, we did it last year as well. So all town council has advised that now you can put all of the articles on a single town meeting warrant. Whereas previously we'd have a special town meeting warrant and an annual town meeting warrant in the spring. Everything will go on one warrant. Right now, the only issue I see for fiscal year '21 is there is an unpaid bill. Our chief assessor, principal assessor left and we hired someone new. And in the transition, one of the bills didn't get paid. So it's I think it's a $4,800 bill for our vendor, Patriot. So you'll see that. Other than that, there really isn't a lot. There aren't a lot of special town meeting articles. So
That's just a timing issue, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a timing issue. I don't see any reserve fund transfers coming down the pike. That being said, the PD move was happening today. I'm assuming I still haven't heard anything. My phone's not going off, so I'm assuming everything went well. There could be some issues of that. We've also done a lot of new hires this year. We've had tremendous turnover. Some of them were anticipated retirements, but others were, kind of COVID-induced retirements. People were close and just said, yeah, I'm out. And they kind of retired unexpectedly. So we've had a number of managers leave. So we're filling positions. We've been very fortunate in Newbury that we've had some excellent homegrown talent. But those people, when they've been in the positions for over 20 years, and then you're faced with going out into the competitive market to replace them, there's been a little bit of sticker shock. So I've been working with the HR board to reclassify positions, make sure we've got job descriptions that accurately reflect the positions. But as of right now, I don't have any reserve fund transfers on the horizon, but how quickly that can change.
Question. You said the PD swapped over today.
Yes.
What's the status going to be with the old town hall going forward while it becomes vacant?
It will be vacant. Right now, the Council on Aging expansion team, I think they're calling themselves, they're engaged working with our architect, the architect that we used for the PD. They've got the first draft of a space needs assessment. That will be, I think they're meeting Thursday afternoon to review the first draft. The potential is potentially they could consider, the select board could consider doing a town hall / COA, similar to what they had thought about doing with the town hall / PD on that site, but it's really too early to tell. We need the report from the architects for the space needs. Then he'd look at marrying that with the town hall to see if it's even feasible for that site. If it is, then the select board would need to make a decision as to if it's going to be there or if they want to do a standalone COA, if so, where they want to do it. So there's a lot of work going on as we speak, but I do know the majority of the board previously was committed to moving back to that location and making that our civic center complex area, for lack of a better term. But that is definitely to be determined.
Okay.
How's that for not giving you a definitive? I think we're on our way. We just votes have not been taken.
Couple of things. One, you mentioned managers retiring. And what is the succession system within the town? In other words, are people grooming their replacements? Is that part of the principle here, or is that not?
we're trying to be very conscious of that. Unfortunately, a lot of our departments are one-person departments, so it's hard to do that. We did, I think 2 budget seasons ago, we were able to create an assistant town accountant position with the intention of getting the person in place, which we did hire a young lady who has been working very closely with the soon-to-be retiring town accountant. There are some other positions where there just isn't a second in command. We
Mhm.
have, with the town clerk who is also going to be retiring, we had an individual who was working in the building department who's a resident. Extremely capable, lovely woman, very competent. She has moved over to become the assistant town clerk and is going to work under the town clerk for the next year with the intention of running for the position in May. So even though, you know, we were a little hamstrung with an elected position, we've been able to put some succession planning in there. We were able to hire a couple people away from other communities. Our conservation agent and our building commissioner are both new. Conservation agent came from Wilmington, building commissioner came from Newburyport. I think one of the things that's attractive was the 4-day work week. People really seem to enjoy that. So what we weren't necessarily able to be competitive in some of the wage areas that was very attractive to many people. So we're moving along, but succession planning, when it can work, we do it. But there are other times when it's just not feasible to create a new position.
Okay. One other question that's going to come up or may come up, and that's our unfunded liabilities we keep paying into them every year, but we still have a pretty substantial unfunded liability.
Agreed.
And it's common across the whole Commonwealth.
Mhm.
So I'd love to be able to talk to that with a little more depth. And so could we go over that, maybe not necessarily in a meeting, but to do a little preparation for speaking to that?
Absolutely. You know, that's something I think everybody knows I'm pretty conservative, and that's something that I was always in the back of my mind. We are thinking about it. We are planning for it. The new report is going to be issued if it hasn't already. I'll have to double check. We did an update of the actuarial analysis. I think right now the plan is get town hall done, get back into town, you know, get our operation back. And at that point, then start committing larger amounts of free cash to the unfunded liability with an eye on getting that fully funded.
What's the rate, what's the cost right now?
You had to ask me. I want to say a little over 7 million.
That's the total liability.
Yep.
But that's over a period of time.
Right, but it's increasing and we're only, last year, what did we put, 100,000?
Yes.
We've been committing 100,000 a year.
I mean, we gotta get
Honestly,
more,
if our buildings had been in better shape, if we hadn't had all this catch up to do, we probably would be funded or close to being funded. But we've just, over the last 7 or 8 years, I mean, our focus has been on facilities and equipment. But we've made great progress. I mean, the roads are almost done. The equipment is where it needs to be. And now all we really have left is COA, town hall, and then at some point in time, the fire station on Morgan Ave. You know, we've made some upgrades to it, but you know, at some point that will have to be addressed. So
Mhm.
I guess it's the first things first.
Yep. Okay, now we've got, let's see. Look for, Next month, we will be on the 1st again. Okay. Do we have, or at that time, will we have any idea of what extra meetings we might have to have before our annual town meeting?
I can put together a calendar and coordinate it with the select board meeting. I know you usually like to have one joint meeting, Craig.
Yeah, if we could,
At least one.
yeah, one meeting with when we get it, after we get are we still getting books? Or are we doing virtual books?
We're gonna do it virtually. It's
Perfect.
talking to the superintendent about that the other day. I'm like, I don't even have time to put together the pretty books. He said, nope, couple pieces of paper. That's all we're doing this year.
That's, yeah, it was a very easy way to go through it, but yes, the budget, but it was
Yeah,
bad because
yeah.
I actually sent him an email that I was like, okay, I saw the booklet, but I don't know what last year's budget was. And he was like, and he sent to me, played to it. I'm like, great, it's a perfect companion. And I was like, and I'm questioning my life choices that I just said that.
Exactly.
But it helped make sense. So the way that they did it was very nice. It was
Good.
a easy way to go through it.
Good, and hopefully by then I'll have more information on special articles, so we can, at our next meeting, we can go through all the details, and we will have the Triton information, and that's really the big budget driver that I'm waiting for now, so,
Okay,
okay,
very good.
great.
Anything else from anyone? Katie? You enjoy yourself, stay warm.
Yeah, have a
We're
good
all
one.
jealous.
I will say that last night, the ocean was so strong here that the buoy that marks the channel
Yeah.
came undone and washed on shore.
Oh, no.
Wow.
The big new whistle buoy that they put in, the thing is huge. It's right up on the beach.
Oh, my.
Wow.
Amazing.
Wow.
All right.
Wow.
Well, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to
Motion.
adjourn?
All those in
Second.
favor? Aye.
Aye.
Bye.
All right. Thank you all. I'll get
Bye,
a
guys.
notice out for the
Nice to
next
see
meeting.
you all.
Terrific. Thank
Also,
you. Have a
I'll
great
get in
night.
touch with you to go over the unfunded liability stuff.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.